And we're going to finish off part 3 today in Doctrine and Covenants, section 62, as we have it today. This one's a pretty standard one. First copy is, again, found in the Revelation Book 1, handwriting of John Whitmer. We get very little corrections from Sidney Rigdon. These are sort of grammatical changes, as you can see. And we do get verse numbering here by W.W. Phelps. So that is the first copy we have of section 62. This one is chapter 63 in the Book of Commandments, and it is section 72 in the 1835 Doctrine and Covenants. It is found in the manuscript history of the church, and there are no differences of any kind from 1981 to 2013. So pretty smooth sailing so far, which is better than we can say for these people, because this whole thing was about how they almost died on a river, and so they got out of the water and had a revelation, and then this one comes the day afterwards. So they left their boats, they're back on land, they're traveling, and Revelation Book 1 gives us this as an introduction to our revelation. It says, 65th Commandment, given August 13th, 1831, on the bank of the river Missouri, at a meeting of some of the elders which had not yet arrived at their journey's end, etc. You always got to put an etc. in there. If it's 1800s, it's got to be etc. So there you go. So they met up with some other missionaries. We'll get to who that is in just a moment. The Book of Commandments, Doctrine and Covenants offer very little, but because it's been so long since I've shown it to you, here's what it actually offers. So the Book of Commandments gives us something. It says a revelation to certain elders while journeying to the land of Zion, given on the bank of the Missouri River, August 1831. And the Doctrine and Covenants gives what they usually give, which is just revelation given August 1831. So if you want to know why I've been skipping that for so long, that's why. There's really not much said. But the Book of Commandments came through a little bit on this one. So from the manuscript history, we get a teeny bit more. It says, on the 13th, I met several of the elders on their way to the land of Zion, and after the joyful salutations with which brethren met each other, with who they are actually contending for the faith once offered to the saints, I received the following revelation, given August 1831. And I would equate this, there's a story in the Book of Mormon where Alma's sort of traveling and he meets the 4 sons of Mosiah, and they'd been on a mission for like 14 years, and they met each other just kind of on the road, passing each other. And Alma got so excited about it, he passed out. I don't see any of that happening here. But yeah, very happy, and a revelation was given. So that's what you get there. From the historical introduction to this, we get on 13th of August, 1831, as Joseph Smith and several elders were on their way back to Ohio after spending a few weeks in Independence, Jackson County, Missouri, Joseph Smith dictated this revelation outlining the responsibilities of elders traveling to Missouri who had not yet reached the land of Zion. At this time, some elders commanded to journey to Missouri had been delayed, in part because of their efforts to preach along the way, and in part because of illness. John Murdoch and Hyrum Smith, for example, were instructed in a June 1831 revelation to go to Missouri by way of Detroit, Michigan territory. They followed this direction, but were delayed when Murdoch fell ill in the first part of August. Murdoch and Hyrum Smith spent a week in Chariton County, Missouri, while Murdoch recovered, and were soon joined by David Whitmer and Harvey Whitlock, who were also en route to Independence. In anticipation of the arrival of these missionaries, a 1st of August revelation had instructed, quote, the residue of the elders of this church which were coming to this land to hold a conference in Jackson County once they had arrived. So there you go. Further on to this, we get on the 13th of August, Joseph Smith and his companions crossed the Missouri River at Chariton and found Murdoch, Hyrum Smith, Whitmer, and Whitlock there. Quote, after the joyful salutations with which brethren met each other, unquote, a later history recounted, which I've just read to you, Joseph Smith dictated the present revelation. The copy of the revelation made by John Whitmer locates the revelation, quote, on the bank of the river Missouri, likely meaning the northern bank at Chariton. The revelation instructed those elders to continue to Zion, to hold a meeting there, and then to return to their homes. So there you go. Now we get a footnote to the historical introduction here. Footnote 8 says, according to Hancock's account, when the saints in Jackson County saw a copy of this revelation, probably brought to them by one of the 4 elders to whom it was directed, it tried their faith. The revelation's contents, which included commendations of those who had borne testimony, and which implied high expectations for proselyting success, apparently struck the Missouri Saints as incongruous with the results of the elders' preaching. As Elizabeth Van Benthuizen Gilbert explained to Hancock, their faith almost failed them because they had heard that nothing was done. In reference to the elders, she said that many had apostatized. After Hancock, Zebedee Coltrane, Simeon Carter, and Solomon Hancock arrived later in the fall with news that they had baptized over 100 individuals, the drooping spirits of the Missouri Saints were revived. So that's footnote 8. So it sounds to me, just gathering this as the amateur historian, and this is one of the things that I love about the Joseph Smith papers, is you just got to read the raw stuff. And I feel like the editors put in all the things. It seems like there is a lot of people who are like, what you're saying, what you're claiming that the Lord is revealing to you is not our experience. This is not what's really going on here. And some people kind of fell away from the church. Ezra Booth, who we keep referring to, we're referring to him because he was writing sort of anti-Mormon stuff from things that I would say are kind of understandable, where he's like, yeah, I mean, they were saying things that just weren't true, and they were claiming that they were coming from God. And so this was a major trial to the saints. Now you can go into like, okay, is it a perspective thing? Is it, how you interpret language? I think all that's very valid. So I'm not saying anything either way, but all that to say, there's a lot of mentions from various people that the way that these revelations were handed out and what people's actual experience was a real trial. It was a real trial for them. I get one significant footnote here. A lot of it's the footnotes that I'm referring to are for the content in the revelation itself, and just trying to kind of fill in a little bit there. A lot of it is referring to scriptural's language or previous revelations or things like that. I'm going to spare you from that just for the sake of time. But we do get one here, which is kind of significant. Not much here, but kind of significant. The text gives us this. It says, I, the Lord, promise the faithful and cannot lie. I, the Lord, am willing. If any among you desireth to ride upon horses or upon mules or in chariots, shall receive this blessing if he receive it from the hand of the Lord with a thankful heart in all things. These things remain with you to do according to judgment and the directions of the Spirit. So footnote to this says, footnote 11, John Murdoch, Hyrum Smith, Harvey Whitlock, and John Whitmer subsequently purchased a horse that Murdoch rode because he was ill. So, and that's actually all that we have for this revelation. And so that's the end of part 3. But I just think it's very interesting that there was a very interesting humility about these people back then, where a revelation would give them the permission to do something that we would think was pretty practical. But I'm assuming at the time, I mean, they were traveling without purse or scrip, as we call it, meaning like they didn't have any money. They were just relying on the goodness of people, and the Lord was going to take care of them and all that. And so to do something like purchasing a horse or taking a stage, I could kind of understand why it's like, I don't know if I should do that, but the revelation says to, and so they do. But I just find that remarkable that there's quite a bit of humility when it comes to that. And also that they would stop and care for one of their own. It's not like they ditched people off and just kept going. There was a lot of practical things around this, meaning that they would stop if they had to, care for somebody, and then move on. And there you have it. That's section 62. Kind of short in comparison, at least to what we have done, but hopefully some, I don't know. In this case, I don't know if there's anything earth-shattering, but it's kind of fun to visualize. They go from kind of leaving an area to being on the waters and just kind of stopping overnight, shooting I guess shooting a turkey, cooking it up, moving on, getting out of the boat when they get scared. I mean, just things that are quite normal, I would say. So the canoes didn't work out. All that to say that, the main theme here, canoe on the Missouri River, apparently a bad idea. So look out for Sawyers. And this is the amateur historian saying, thank you for joining me once again and have a great week.